Okay, we are good to go.
Well, hello everyone. I am Mike Waters and I'm the chair of the LGBTQIA plus Intersectional Rights Task Force, which is a task force of the City of Salem Human Rights Commission. And my pronouns are they and them. I live in Ward 6 and delighted to be here tonight, and I'll pass it to Kathy.
Hi everyone, Kathy Ostran-Ponshin. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission as well as the task force. I live in South Salem, and I'll pass it to Kelsey.
Thanks, Kathy. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a member of Ward 4. And I think last but certainly not least, Gretchen.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, Gretchen Bennett, she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm staff to the commission.
So we have a relatively light agenda today as we continue to work on our Safe Spaces project. I wondered, Gretchen, if there was any public comment?
No, none received.
All right. And our next item on the agenda is minutes. Did folks get a chance to take a look at the minutes, and were there any, and would anybody like to move to approve them, if so?
I move to approve the minutes from, what date was that? May.
April 27th.
Thank you, April 27th.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So let's go into the Safe Spaces implementation discussion. Gretchen and I pre-meet for this meeting, and during our pre-meeting, we kind of talked about last meeting and, just recognizing that we have kind of blown the original timeline, but we did so intentionally so that we could get a little bit deeper into things. It sounds like it's weird being virtual because we can't always get to talk, but it sounds like we're all kind of on board with let's do this right and not do it fast. And so kind of in the spirit of that, we have a couple things to look at tonight. I don't know that we're going to have any final anything with us tonight, but at the very least, we can kind of continue the discussion and think about what else we may need to do to kind of move forward. There are a couple documents that were mailed out to you. One of them was a draft of an artist brief. That's an example of what could be sent out as a call for artists. And the other one is sort of this checklist idea of that we might use to evaluate program participants and kind of assess their readiness for the program, and as well as what they might need out of the program in order to be successful participants. We can go in order and start with the artist brief and the order of our agenda if we like. Any objection to that? So what did you all think when you took a look at that artist brief? I'm going to pull it up for me.
This is Kelsey. I loved how it was broad. And so like that gives the artist a lot of room to work while also like identifying our priorities. So especially the kind of representation of who we serve. And so I love that. I think it was simple enough and broad enough to allow for full creativity. So I think it's great.
I agree with everything Kelsey said. I took a look at it. It looks fine. I don't have any concerns or suggestions.
Well, let's just pin that then, and we can always look at it again before we move to an implementation plan. So there's opportunity for us to review it again, as well as for our other participants to review it who weren't on the call tonight, but sounds like it's a thumbs up.
Mhm.
I had one quick question, Mike.
Yeah.
The person that would send an email declaring interest in including work samples, do you have any format expectations about those work samples, or does it not really matter?
I would think you would want in a consistent format, like a PDF format, for example, so that you're kind of comparing apples to apples, as well as that's not to make it a barrier to anyone, but it's a sign that the person might be a professional artist designer if they can make the sample be in the right kind of format. So that would be kind of my recommendation, but others' thoughts?
Yeah, I like a PDF format. I think we can maybe include on there like free links to like PDF converters if they don't have access to one, or kind of instructions on how to print something as a PDF. But I think PDFs are just, every computer can open one, and that's accessible to people who are reviewing it.
Thank you. Got it. Thanks. Yeah, no other questions for me. I was just wondering about that one part. I imagine getting that question.
Yeah, it's definitely legitimate. I mean, if we got a traditional artist, for example, who wanted to sketch or draw something, then that there could be the occasion where the person doesn't have that kind of software, and we wouldn't want to limit them from being able to at least submit their interest.
I wonder if it would help if I explore with the library what their resources are. Like, let's say, for example, you do charcoal or watercolor and you've not turned it into an electronic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Could the library's scanning and computer services assist with a conversion? Or is that just really not what we're looking
We'd
for?
probably do a professional scan.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are places that still do that.
I don't know either.
Back in the day, you know, when I was doing magazines, we would go to the Drum Scanner Corporation, XYZ. This was before we had any desktop scanners. We had to take it to this place, and we would deliver, you know, we'd give them film or like a little transparency, and then they would give us a CD back with the images on it. I mean, it cracks me up to even think about it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would imagine if you had a traditional artist, you'd want to have it scanned like by a desktop professional, somebody who's got a high powered enough scanner, and I could help you find somebody.
Okay, if it becomes an issue, maybe I'll reach out to you. Yeah. We do have a desktop publishing team at the city, for example, and maybe they'd be able to. I don't know.
Probably have a nice scanner. Yeah.
Probably. Good. Okay.
Just getting it to be the quality that you want for, like, if you need to blow it up for something. The decal itself, you know, that's easy peasy. It's if you want to blow it up. And most people who are professional designers will probably offer up a vector format, but we may get non-professionals that are interested and that have an important voice that we want to feature in the program. So I wouldn't want to limit it or create barriers.
We have a scanner on our copy machine at the office, for example. I was thinking if someone brought something there, would that be appropriate? You know, probably not. That shows you my skill with that. I can scan on our copier.
Yeah. Good call. Well, I think more of the meat of the discussion is around our checklist. So why don't we move over to that? Gretchen, you've made some edits based on, I think, on our discussion last time. Is that right?
That's right.
And really helpful to kind of see this again. When you all, I guess I'll start by posing a question. When you all look at this list, which includes categories like customer service, design and decor, the physical environment, the policies and the training, is there any element that you think might be missing? And conversely, are there any areas that you think might be enhanced where there might be more to add?
So I just found this resource. I sent the link to Gretchen, but it's called the Out Foundation. That's my air fryer. And okay, sorry. I'm gonna stop this and it's done. Okay, great. And so they have a resource where you can look into inclusive gyms in your area. And they have a self-report place. And so I thought we could also like pull things from that, like the format. They have like resources to like develop non-discrimination policies and things like that. So I think we can kind of take a look at that. So I'm looking at it now. And it says like, does your facility have a non-discrimination policy which explicitly protects individuals on the basis of, just like we have, it's like uploading your policies. Does it have like a waiver that explicitly addresses like anti-LGBTQ plus language and behavior? So I think like we can kind of pull from that. But I really like the start of what we have going on with this. So Gretchen, thank you so much for doing that. But I wanted to just bring up that resource that I literally just stumbled upon.
It's great. I'll be excited to digest it. It also sounds like something we could add to the resource checklist. I mean, not checklist, the resource. Remember how we have like this whole list of resources, the guidebook, or what, I can't remember what we were calling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One category, I don't know, might be outside of our expertise, but might be of interest is sort of the back end investments or, yeah, I don't, there's a back end or a back of the house side to a place as well. And I don't know, I wouldn't even begin to know how to evaluate that. So I hesitate even bringing it up, but I'm trying to think of all the categories, from the customers, the person walking in the door and the experience they receive. But maybe the answer lies right there with the original objective is, what is that person's experience? Are they experiencing safety physically in the space and in their interactions with people? And maybe that's what could drive our question about, are all of the criteria or all of the category elements here?
Yeah, there is the section on policy and procedure that talks about non-discrimination, and there's almost part of me that wonders, should there be something that specifies, applying to all those who interact with your business, whether customers, vendors, employees, and so on, like whether that should be expanded just a little bit to kind of get to that, because it wouldn't be great for somebody to be in the program who had, like, maybe they have good customer experiences, they've got like a pretty cool environment where people feel safe going in. And then behind the scenes, it's just a train wreck of, of messiness and, where they've got somebody in the back of the house who's not behaving well and they don't address it. So it might be worth including that kind of more comprehensive, as well as how they work with vendors and others. What do you all think about that?
Makes sense to me. I mean, looking at that part of the checklist, there's only one thing there. And I feel like there's more that we could add in that area, but it's not coming to me what that would be, but I feel like that might be an area we could definitely fill out. And yeah, how they treat others that they deal with, I think is important.
An example might be in your subcontracting, do your expectations around non-discrimination or equity carry forward in your subcontracts or vendor relationships? Kelsey, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Oh, you're good. I like that idea. I'm wondering if like having an expectation around like, or do you have a like a complaint system or like a bias report system? Or like how do you address employee like complaints around discrimination?
Mhm.
Like maybe they can explain their policy or their procedure rather.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect a lot of our smaller businesses do not have documentation to this effect, but maybe that's something that we can actually help them with. Like maybe that resource packet could include, this is a sample vendor policy. This is a sample employee complaint policy. That gets a little dicey. I know from my work experience, like we struggle because we don't, we're a workers' comp company and we don't give HR advice unless it's related directly to workers' comp. But like that could be a tension as we're building these materials, that we can't necessarily be giving them legal advice, but if we can give them some sample language or give them an idea of what we're looking for, it's that kind of piece too around how somebody can come into this program from a place of being somewhere on the journey, and the point of the program is to progress them, to move them forward. I saw snaps from Kelsey, so that felt good.
And even if we don't provide samples that they can use, I think if we can provide just ideas of things that they might want to explore that maybe they didn't think of before or didn't really know where to go, if we can provide those resources, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, as well as we kind of talked about the importance of providing just those general DEI resources with places to call, local trainers, local, where they can go to get support as they move along and progress as a business. The one thing that I think might be another tension that we might see in this, and especially with our smaller businesses, is, for some of these, their answer might be no. And like, I really can't afford it, or really can't do it, like, so when it comes to like training, well, no, I haven't provided DEI training. I can't even afford to, fix my hood over one of my ovens, or I can't even afford to do X. How do you expect me to afford it? So I want to be, or I should say, I think it's really important for us to be empathetic with those smaller struggling businesses, that they might not have all the bells and whistles. I'm not sure how to reflect that in the document or in our scoring, or like however we want to do that, but like that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. and especially right now, I'm actually kind of pleased that we're delayed a little bit with this program because right now businesses are really, really struggling. They're struggling with keeping up staffs. They're struggling with, in many cases, they're still having sort of pandemic era struggles of like not being able to have enough customers, that kind of thing. So it's just something I've been thinking about.
I think on that note, I think we can, in our resource packet, we can include links to like free courses, free diversity DEI training. So like, okay, you can't afford to bring in like a world-renowned trainer because yes, they're very expensive. But like here are some things that you could be doing, or here's like a book resource. So rather than $2,000, it's like $20 buying a book and you're having like a discussion, something like that. Like low cost, free and low cost options.
Free and low cost options. I think that would probably be the most used item in the packet, really. Yeah, that's great.
One question we might want to consider back to the policy point is if, with a well-written disclaimer that we can't give legal or HR advice, maybe here are a few examples that organizations have freely shared, you know, that might be resources as well. It occurs to me that might be an additional way to go in addition to everything being talked about. And then maybe, you know, I mean, I think the city of Salem's HR piece is on our website, for example, but there may be other organizations that have that already up on the web that we could have permission to link to as an example. And there might be a few examples out there that are particularly well done.
I really think that's what the business owners crave, are just examples of how to do it. When you think about everything that's required to open a business, you know, there's a tendency to think that these folks have to go out and create their own of everything. And so the more examples we can link, and I love the idea of linking to examples, because then the links, you know, get updated by their respective organization. It doesn't become our job as a committee that's putting together this packet to like always be updating examples. I think those are good call outs, and definitely the legalese piece of it, making sure that, you know, obviously this program isn't going to be giving people legal and HR advice. I think is good too.
Does anyone here interact with the Chemeketa Center for Business and Industry? I think over on High Street. That's dawning on me as it's a wonderful resource for new and emerging businesses. And it dawns on me, they easily could have exactly what we're describing. I could do some investigation and see.
Well, and they might be a great place for us to plug our materials in too.
Yeah.
You know, if we have a brochure or something related to joining the program, it would be a perfect place to stick that. One thought that I have kind of as I'm scrolling through the questions is some of the questions are yes, no, and some of them require a little bit more description. I think it's important to find a balance in there. I think that if the application is too onerous, then somebody might decide just not to do it at all, even if they agree with the tenets of the program or the right thing. On the flip side, if it's just a bunch of yes, no questions, it almost becomes too rote and too easy. I say that without like a real strong stance on which direction to go, but it does seem like it's got to be a little bit balanced, maybe just a handful of those open-ended questions and more yes, no questions. But I wonder what you all thought about that balance. Or
That sounds right to me. I think I agree. Not all yes, no, because that would be too
easy.
easy to go through. We want some of that information and some of that content, but not overdo it, because you're exactly right. We don't want it to be too much of a burden, because we're not going to want to do it. It's no one more piece of paperwork that we're adding to it. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
It might be something where I could see it even being structured where it was like in each section, a series of yes, no questions, and then an open-ended, a series of yes, no questions, and then an open-ended. Like that kind of balance, I think, could be really helpful for somebody. One, it would appear easy at the outset, so they might be willing to do it. And then it's a little bit harder, so it requires a commitment as they go along. Do we have any other thoughts on our checklist or things we think are?
I flagged a question on page 1 under that little, what will we do with the information paragraph about visits, and wondered if there's any clarity. Do you think that we need on that section, or if you like how it hits? Ultimately, one of the things on my mind is having the ability to understand who we welcome in and who we exclude. I think it's challenging for a public entity to exclude someone without real clear ability to articulate and understand that. And so for me, as I think about the overall implementation of the program, you know, like if we visited some but not others, if the visits helped us understand better, you know, can we have that make sense just by maybe a visit would be if the person requested technical assistance in filling out the application, or if the person felt that seeing the space was helpful? Or do we want to begin by trying to visit everybody so that there's equity in that, and then rein that in if it gets undoable? I wasn't sure, but I'm thinking about that end question of, gosh, if we exclude somebody, how do we talk about that? Or how do we ensure that it's fair and equitable, you know?
I think it's a great question, and I would struggle with either solution. I mean, the solution of visiting everybody feels like really hard to do, but then if you only cherry pick some people for a visit based on what's on their questionnaire, yeah, that question of what triggers it, I think, is really, really important. You know, are they triggered for a visit because there's something on the questionnaire that needs more clarity? Are they triggered for a visit randomly? What is that? I don't know. You have thoughts?
I'm wondering, is that something that we should run by legal? Like what are we able to do that is within legality as a public entity? So I think some guidance there would be helpful for me.
Absolutely. I think that we'll want to bring this when it's developed to them. And I know that's exactly what they'll need is really clear and defensible criteria. Like, for example, if we had a publicly facing bulletin board, If we were going to exclude the content of the bulletin board, it better be based on a really precise policy, otherwise it's an open bulletin board. And so, yeah, for example, I think something along the lines of what Mike just suggested could work. Like maybe we say, oh, we have capacity to do 3 visits a month. And the first year of the program, we'll welcome 36 participants and that's it. Or we're going to randomly select people to visit. And then over the course of your life in the program, we're going to try to visit you once every 2 years, or like just something that helps it make sense. I do think it'll be appropriate to make inquiry if applications are unclear. That feels appropriate to do as part of our procedure. Yeah.
If it would be helpful, I can reach out to the Out Foundation to see kind of their process. Like, do they, and they're nonprofit, so it is different. Like, do they meet with folks, kind of what their guidelines are? I can reach out to them and send you all any information that they give. Would that be helpful? Okay.
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how many places are interested right away, what the volume is. It's kind of hard to
know.
to say without knowing what we're going to get. But I mean, it feels to me like we should visit everyone just to know, but I know that takes a lot of resources and a lot of time. But I don't know. I can see.
It seems like the kind of thing where in year 1, it might not be a challenge really, because they'll probably trickle in. You might get 5, in the first month, and maybe 3 the following month, because there's always more adoption right at the start when people hear about it, and then it kind of can trickle down, and then you can do some promotion and then it can start to trickle up. But there's also this thing with these kinds of things where sometimes if the program's popular, it could snowball, and then you've got way more than you ever meant to contend with. And I think that would be my bigger fear, would be that we would get so many more wanting to participate than we had capacity to really, fully evaluate. So knowing that this checklist is kind of the major tool of evaluation, it becomes that question of, yeah, when is a visit warranted? Because I do think, as people administrating this, that if there's something on the application that's concerning, it's important to place priority on a visit there. So even randomly selecting doesn't really meet that need. So I don't know. I think it's a tough question. That's why we're doing all these discussions, because I think it's kind of hard to. I also think, we're kind of doing something a little bit novel compared to other cities that have done these. Like where Seattle's was really just you got a sticker if you agreed to report hate crimes. We're really asking quite a lot of these businesses. And so I think that's why it takes a little bit more discussion and planning for that reason.
Well, Gretchen raises a really good point too. What happens if the question, the checklist does raise concerns and we do a visit and there are concerns? What do we do then? If we're going to decline somebody, are there things that they can do, to get to a point where they would be accepted in the program? Is there some sort of, I don't know, I hadn't even thought about that. There's a whole set of questions if that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a conundrum. And again, there isn't really precedent for how this works, because in the other cities where we've seen it done, the ask has been so much more minimal.
It's like you're included until something
you're
happens
included.
where you're okay.
I I don't even know if they have criteria for excluding from the Seattle program because it's so basic. It's like a sticker that says, here's how to report hate crimes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum with how we want to do our program, the best way to do it. But I think it's important. Very early on when we started meeting about this and kind of discussing this idea, that was something that came out loud and clear from the committee members at the time, which was this has to like have teeth. It has to be real. This shouldn't be just a PR thing.
Right.
Yeah. Not that I want to disparage public relations. I did it for years, but that's not what this is.
So it might be about just being very transparent about the path, designing a path, here's what we're going to look at and I'll just play an example. For example, we visit when we have questions on the application. So that's clear on when we visit and when we don't. I'm borrowing from an earlier meeting. I think one or more of you might have said, we will welcome in people who demonstrate substantive or maybe 2 or more elements on our checklist in each category. And then that way we can explain if someone really doesn't meet that, why we wouldn't welcome them in at this time. But that's not to say that they can't continue to apply as they work towards those objectives, and we're delighted to offer resources towards helping them come in. But just something like that, that's, and then here's how we exclude, if you have X, I remember we talked about an exclusion could look like lack of cooperation or lack of working with us when we receive complaints from the public, then that could be a reason for non-renewal. So if we just kind of lay out reasons for non-renewal, reasons why we're going to welcome you in and why we won't welcome you in, that, and if that's just all really transparent, I imagine that gives us some guidance as we start sifting and sorting what we're seeing.
I think it's also important to remember that we're going to do a lot of planning around kind of these worst case scenarios. Chances are pretty high that people who are applying, because this is an opt-in program, most of them are going to meet well above the number of criteria that we have listed. They'll be enthusiastically yes on most of the areas. And if there's an area where they're a no, they might just fix it. If it's like about their restroom signage and having an all gender signage, they'll probably just fix it, is my guess, for most of the people who would choose to participate or pursue this. But I love what you're saying, Gretchen, because we just have to be really clear in what we're laying out for folks. And I don't know what a no looks like yet. I think once we have kind of the final checklist, we might be able to say no is if you have, 7 no's on the checklist or something, or 7 areas on the checklist that aren't working, or 7 I made up randomly. It could be 3, but you kind of know what I'm saying.
And I think you're right. I think the likelihood of us declining someone is pretty low, but I think we need to be prepared for that if we're going to go out there and implement this. I mean, there's got to, yeah. I think most people who apply are going to be very much on top of and very willing to do all these things that we're asking of them.
It might help the task force to complete the checklist. And then I imagine you could sit back and think, well, what would be a yes and what would be a no after you see all of the elements? Because there could be more elements to build out as we study Kelsey's new resource, and you may think of additional elements to add. Then that might be a great time to say, okay, here's what a winning application would look like. Here's what really a losing application would look like.
Are there, Gretchen, do you think there are criteria we need to have around the ongoing evaluation? For example, who and how, I think, are really important questions. So is it always HRC committee members? Is it a panel of, is it one person? Is it 3 people? Is it 7 people? You know, thinking about how they get evaluated and evaluating them consistently might help with some of the questions that legal might inevitably have around how you're doing that. My gut says it's kind of a 3-person job, that with 3 people, you've got enough variety, assuming they're not 3 of the exact same person. You've kind of got some variety, and that it makes sense to be commission members, and that, you know, there's certain, or commission, friends of the commission, as it were, ex-members. But we might want to put some thinking to that too, so that that's consistent, so that it doesn't end up falling. Like, I could see the bad case scenario would be for it to fall to like 1 person, and that 1 person has a bias against a particular business or a particular business owner, and that kind of ends up driving, you know, a decision that's not favorable. Again, like super unlikely, but it does seem like maybe spelling that out, what that evaluation process looks like, would be important.
I think you said this, Mike, but if it's a 3-person job, the 3 people need to have different perspectives, right? If all 3 have look at these the same way, that's not going to be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Maybe just little housekeeping question, maybe the evaluation process is its own page. I was kind of trying to build that into the top of the checklist, because I figured folks would want to know as they're rolling into the checklist, what are you going to do with this? But maybe that's kind of a cover memo, and then there's the checklist.
Yeah.
Pardon.
Because I think the evaluation process, like we've been saying, needs to have a little bit more meat to it, so that it meets those requirements for legal for the city. Well, we're rounding out to our last 15 minutes, and I wondered if there was anything else on this checklist or evaluation criteria that we wanted to hit on tonight.
I think what might be helpful for me is, I mean, we have other materials that we put together, right? To just kind of look at everything maybe together and see if that
Where those gaps might be.
Raises other thoughts, or maybe there's some inconsistency that we need to match up. Yeah, because it's been a while since I've looked at the resource guide.
Yeah, we kind of have like the program charter, the resource guide, we've got this checklist, we've got the artist brief. We kind of have a bunch of things that we've put together. I wonder if we want to do a collection of them, and then that would help us see where we might have more gaps in the program, things that we need to build. I love that idea. Kelsey, did you say something? I don't know if you were on mute.
No, my cat's just staring at something outside of the window, and it's kind of freaking me out. Naturally.
We always have good animal things happen on this call, I've noticed.
Agreed. But I love all of this. I love like making like a folder or something where all of our documents are there so that we can peruse easily.
Yeah, I love that too. Well, are we checklisted out? I don't think we have anything else on our agenda except for member remarks and announcement. And I only have one remark, which is that it's Pride Month. Yay! So happy Pride Month to everybody.
The city council issued a proclamation related to Pride. Be sure to get that out to you all.
Does that go in the Friday email?
I don't know. That's a good question. They often do, but I don't know if they do as a matter of course. You know, we also, Kathy, for the awareness committee, at one point, we had talked about those proclamations being something that can go to our email group, but then we've also been very thoughtful about what to do for the monthly email. I wonder if more than one email should happen when there's proclamations, maybe.
I feel like we could do more than one if there was something worth
Pride
sharing. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's great. I look forward to seeing the proclamation. However I end up receiving it, I'm sure I will. Anything else for this evening?
Mike, I thought of one last detail. I'm sorry to go back real quick, but at one point last month, the question was if we did a site visit to a prospective business or organization in the Safe Spaces program, would that be a public meeting? And I clarified that no, it would not, as long as you don't stand and start deliberating over a bunch of recommendations or changes. If you're just going to conduct the site visit, then it would not be. But sorry, I didn't remember that earlier.
That's great. That's great to hear. Well, I think that's all they wrote. Very good meeting. It was great to see you both. I imagine you have an awareness meeting coming up.
We had that last week.
Oh, you had it last week. That's right. Well, I was in San Diego. Very fun. Well, we have 2 meetings this month because of our, so I will see you in late June. When is that? June 22nd. So just a few weeks. See you soon.
Sounds good. See you soon. Take care.
Bye, y'all.